felt for all human suffering, but obedience required. No, friend, my friend, designation, 2, confirmed. Jay had never felt Hailey so determined before. It was kind of scary. Please? She asked nervously. What's happening? A torrent of light burst through the window. It was as if a sun had risen over Medchusco's horizon. All of space was alive with brilliant efflorescences. The adult Keent said, Evacuation enacted. Designated. Jay felt a wash of guilty triumph rushing out from her friend. She wanted to reach out and comfort Hailey, who she knew from the adult's reaction was in big trouble over something. Instead, she concentrated on forming a beaming smile at the heart of her own mind, hoping Hailey would pick it up. Then the air around her was crawling as if she was caught in a breeze. Jay! One of the nurses called. Come along, sweetie, you! The light around Jay was fading fast, along with the sounds of the ward. She could just hear the nurse's gasp of astonishment. The breeze abruptly turned into a small gale, whipping her nightie around and making her bristly hair stand on end. Some kind of grey fog was forming around her, a perfectly spherical bubble of the stuff, with her at the centre, except she couldn't feel any dampness in the air. It darkened rapidly, reducing the ward to weak spectral outlines. Then the boundary expanded at a speed so frightening that Jay screamed. The boundary vanished, and with it any sign of the ward. She was alone in space, devoid of stars, and falling. Jay put her hands to her head and screamed again, as hard as she possibly could. It didn't put a stop to any of the horror. She paused to suck down a huge breath. That was when the boundary reappeared out on the edge of nowhere, hurtling towards her so fast from every direction that she knew the impact would squash her flat. She jammed her eyes shut. Mummy! Something like a stiff feather tickled the soles of her feet, and she was abruptly standing on solid ground. Jay windmilled her arms for balance, pitching forward. She landed hard on some kind of cool floor, her eyes still tight shut. The air she gulped down was warmer than it had been in the ward, and a lot more humid. Funny smell. Rosy light was playing over her eyelids. Still crouched on all fours, Jay risked a quick peep as she gathered herself to scream again. The sight which greeted her was so incredible that the breath stalled in her throat. "Oh gosh!" was all she eventually managed to squeak. Joshua initiated the ZTT jump with little enthusiasm. His downcast mood was one which he shared with all the Lady Mac's crew and passengers, at least those who weren't in Zero Tau. To have achieved so much, only to have their final triumph snatched away. Except, once the initial shock of discovering that tranquility had vanished from its orbit had subsided, he wasn't frightened, not for Ione or his child. Tranquility hadn't been destroyed. There was at least that comfort, which logically meant the habitat had been possessed and snatched out of the universe. He didn't believe it, but his intuition was hardly infallible. Perhaps he simply didn't want to believe it. Tranquility was home. The emotional investment he had in the habitat and its precious contents was enormous. Tell anyone that everything they ever treasured had been erased, and the reaction is always the same. Whatever. His vacillation made him as miserable as the rest of the ship, just for a different reason. "Jump confirmed," he said. "Samuel, you're on." Lady Mac had jumped into one of Trafalgar's designated emergence zones, 100,000 kilometers above Avon. Her transponder was already blaring out her flight authority codes. Somehow Joshua didn't think that would quite be enough. Not when you barged in, unexpected, on the Confederation's primary military base in the middle of a crisis like this one. "I've got distortion fields focusing on us," Dahibais said drolly. "5 of them, I think." The flight computer alerted Joshua that targeting radars were locking on to the hull. When he accessed the sensors rising out of their recesses, he found 3 Voidhawks and 2 frigates on interception courses. Trafalgar's Strategic Defense Command was directing a barrage of questions at him. He glanced over at the Edonist as he started to datavise a response. Samuel was lying prone on his acceleration couch, eyes closed, as he conversed with other Edonists in the asteroid. Saha grinned round phlegmatically. "How many medals